Hi, Peter. Thank you very much for coming to do this podcast, Intercultural Kingdom podcast with me. I'm very pleased to see you again. It's not long we met. It's not long we know each other because it's not very long. You joined the diocese. So I will not say who you are by yourself, but for you, but you say it by yourself. So tell us who you are and your journey up to this point, please.
Thank you, David. It's lovely to be here with you today. My name's Peter Bennett. I'm the team rector of the Salford All Saints team ministry, which includes a number of churches in and around Salford. I've been here since mid-November. Before that, I was over in Crewe in Chester Diocese, so some similarities, but everything in Salford seems to be kind of bigger, more complicated, more different types of people, different backgrounds, but I'm absolutely loving the richness of it all.
Thank you very much. That's where you are now. And what within your parish, the one you were coming from, you said there's slight difference. How are they in the ethnic mix for where you were and what you do now?
Yes, and Crewe is a very interesting place. I mean, they had quite a lot of immigration from Eastern Europe, quite a lot of Polish people, Polish shops, and a lot of strong Polish community there. Also, a number of Iranians, Africans, quite a few people housed in hotels as part of immigration process. So we used to have cafes there where you'd meet people from all over the world at St Andrews in Crewe. And, you get to learn a little bit about where they come from, what they were hoping for. And sadly, even if they did end up getting successfully settled in the UK, they'd often be moved off very quickly afterwards. So we had the joy of seeing lots of different types of people, but not always being able to have that long-term relationship. But then, as I say, the Eastern European community, that's arrived a lot of it, around 2008 or so, I think, around then, are much more integrated into the community.
Okay.
And yeah, interesting place.
Yeah. So more or less the European integrate very well, and the others all depends on fate, where they got sent to after they got their visa. So is that what?
Yes, I mean it was quite interesting. The integration seems to come very initially from children who, in local primary schools, incredibly quick at picking up English and picking up the local culture. I mean, my wife is German, and so I've always been involved with the German community wherever I've been, and I've noticed East German parents who didn't really speak much English, having children with thick local accents in Crewe, and interpreting and helping and supporting their parents.
Right.
So
that's interesting. So now that's Crewe, and you came to Salford. What is the difference? Any similarity, any difference between the parishes and the makeup of the congregants you're dealing with, or the community?
Well, there's a lot more diversity here in Salford, and particularly at St Thomas in Pendleton, where one of our churches, there's a sizable Iranian community deeply integrated into our church. And through them as well, we have a lot of contact with the wider Iranian community, which has been an absolute joy because, again, my wife, as well as being German, was actually born in Tehran, and her parents were expats, so moved around from Afghanistan, Iran, and she didn't move to the UK until she was about 5. Allegedly spoke a little bit of Farsi, but that's long gone now. So lots of photos of her family from that time in their lives and things from that culture. So it's been an absolute joy for her to, in that way, kind of reconnect.
I'm surprised to hear that, because your wife is just that link that brings everything together when it comes to automatic integration. People are from Iran and Afghanistan were very curious about her, and for someone who is German born and, born in Tehran and all the other stuff like that. So would you say that helps you to relate quicker and better with people from Farsi or Persian heritage in Salford or wherever you've been, where they exist?
I think it helps the more contact you have with different cultures, both in terms of relating to people, but just enriching your own life, really. And I lived for about, we lived for about 9-10 years in London. And of course, many different cultures mixed. Lived for a couple of years in Spain, and so needed to speak Spanish well enough to get through that.
Yeah.
And one of my daughters speaks Russian and French, and so as a family, we've always been really interested in what you can pick up and what you can learn through other cultures. So coming to Salford and seeing people, not just the Iranian community in our church, but also African and Indian, all with different things that they bring. Different. One of the most joyful things for me in Crewe was working with a Nigerian priest. And I remember him explaining to me how Igbo names work, if you like.
Yes.
And these marvelous examples of, names that, means it's God I follow, or in God's praise, or put your trust in God.
Yeah.
And it was lovely. A lady came for the first time to our church a couple of weeks ago with an obviously Igbo name. And it was lovely to ask her, do you mind, is that an Igbo name? Could you tell me what it means? And there it was, I can't remember exactly, but it was something like God is wonderful. And we had this wonderful connection. I'd never come across that. And you think it just enriches your own faith through that contact and sharing.
Yeah, you know what? I read a piece one time. I think it's one of my contemporaries. I wrote the book, talking about cultural intelligence, and that some people, it comes to them naturally, some to them through their formation. I think you are one of the latter, the way you were brought up and the way you've mixed up to. So it seems that perhaps that's why we get on, because I've only just met you about 3 months or so ago, and we clicked very well. I can see that in our first meeting. And I would say sometimes for people that do not have that sort of exposure like you are, that gave you that innate intelligence how to deal with different cultures, perhaps they probably just need to work on that sort of thing to make them feel more welcoming in their parishes. Will you say that's a done thing that has to happen, or maybe they can just work on it as a journey?
I think that's a really good idea. I think it's not always obvious how to engage with people generally. A lot of people at church would love to say, oh, we are the most welcoming church, we're the most friendly, we love everybody, come on in. But without consciously thinking about it, sometimes it's easy to end up in small groups of people. If Sunday's your chance to catch up with your friends you've known for years. So I think some of these things you need to make an effort to open up a little bit, to become inquisitive about the people around you that you don't know yet. I think one of the lovely things over here in Salford is the opportunities we've had with the wider community. So there's a charity called Taban, which was founded by Reverend Richard Young at Holy Innocents, and their mission, they say, we help and support Farsi-speaking migrants to succeed in the UK.
I'll quickly tell you, Richard Young was here today.
Was he?
Yeah. He spoke to us on this podcast earlier today.
Well, I won't overdo anything that he would have said to you. So, yeah, well, you obviously know what a great guy. And he has... one of his staff, Mojgan, comes to St. Thomas's on a Wednesday, and there's a drop-in centre for Iranian Farsi speakers to get support, combined with making food for lunch, which we've kind of all share in, and it was delicious as well. I mean, don't get me started on a cultural interchange that sharing food together is, breaking bread together is. So, and through that connection, we have on the 21st of December, the shortest day, the Yalda celebration, which is
1st of December, you say?
Yes, it's the so being able to open up the church hall area for that kind of community celebration. And they had the music was fantastic. I was there. They had a DJ, and I was kind of shazamming the odd tune. So my daughters love some of them love world music particularly. So we were swapping tips. But it all connects from one thing to another. There's a Persian theatre group that would like to now rehearse in the church. So, you start to you commit to say, just come along and chat to somebody, and then can get drawn into kind of richer and deeper connection.
Yeah, right. You've mentioned a couple of things that really piqued my interest here. 21st of December, Yalda. I'm always very interested in events and festivals to be celebrated, no matter how small or big. For instance, is it today, Lunar Year for the Chinese, Year of the Snake? So I remember that because I think it's integral to how communities relate with themselves, especially when they're in a foreign land, to celebrate that. And also the Persian theatre group. Now, that leads me into, you have your church, it's a traditional church, in whichever way you do your worship. And you have the mix of different heritage, prominently from the Persia heritage, coming to worship and doing things together. What advice will you give to someone like you in different parts of the diocese, that how best can they make people from, doesn't have to be from Iran and Afghanistan, from any part of the world, feel welcome and want to make that church their own base church?
That is a very good question. I think one of the most useful bits of advice I give is really a very basic one, which is to remain interested in everyone and to see everybody as created in God's image, as another part of that image that we're trying to discern in the world around us. You might need help with translation in order to do that. I mean, I know a lot of priests who swear by or sometimes at Google Translate for its ability to at least allow a basic conversation to happen. But just listening, being a listening presence and being open. And one of the things that has given me a lot of joy recently since I've arrived is we have a member of our Iranian community reading in church and reading the English readings. Okay. Now, that's such a basic, simple thing, but it's very easy to think, you will read this in Farsi, yes. We'll read this in English, and actually to just make a conscious effort to involve and engage people. I'm hoping we can get some people on the PCC. We're just rejoicing because Henry, a Nigerian member of our congregation, has just started ALM training.
That's great, isn't it? Yeah.
And ALM stands for?
Authorized Lay Ministry.
There we go. You did.
I get? Oh God, yes. You put me on the spot, man.
Well, you warned me beforehand to avoid the acronyms. So.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Don't want miscommunication there.
Yeah.
So I would say, look to release the gifts and the callings of the people around you, and it's easy to assume that if there are difficulties in communication, that means people have limitations in what they are doing or thinking or their desire to be involved. But actually, I think you just need to maybe make a little bit more of an effort to reach.
Yes, I get that. When you mentioned the word gifts, it's every time you mention certain things that clicked a little bit in my thinking. Gifts is big in the way I look at different cultures and heritages interacting because, well, may I ask you, what do you think interculturality is all about? Because we all have gifts, no matter how limited or big it is. But if we don't share it, they're really hopeless because at the end of the day, if I have a gift from my background, I have to be able to share it with you, and vice versa. Hence, both of us will grow and be probably more, what can I say, culturally intelligent in the way we do things. So, from your environment, what are the sort of obvious gifts or benefits you found with different cultures trying to interact with the, what I would say, host original congregation that probably have been existing in that area for generations and generations?
That's a very interesting question. I'm kind of smiling as I say this, because just the other day, when Jamila was reading from the Bible and had asked me just a quick question about how to pronounce a particular thing, I'd thought people often do this, and if you're from an English background, you will, all the passages in the Bible you most fear. There's a wonderful one around Pentecost, isn't there? And with lists of names you can't pronounce. It really fascinated me that she wasn't asking about those kind of names, because these are Middle Eastern names, totally natural, totally straightforward. I've discovered I've been mispronouncing them for decades. And it's a tiny little thing. And I just thought, we have all of this in the Bible of, the reminder, you were strangers in a foreign land, you were, captives, you were taken away into other places, and so many things happening, say, in a Middle Eastern context.
Yeah.
And so just simple things like Iranian communities, people from that area who just have so much more insight into a lot of biblical imagery and a lot of understanding of even though the culture has moved on from those times.
Yes.
So I found that's a really simple example. I mean, other ones are things like reflecting together on parables you had experience in the past. The classic example is the one of, the Good Samaritan, where they say, imagine yourself in the parable, in the story, and then you just check and you say, who exactly did you think you were? Yeah. And you say, I am the one who, I'm so bad, I was walking past, and don't think, I was actually the one lying bleeding on the road.
On the road, yes, that's true.
So,
it's very interesting.
So I think what we get, sharing scripture together as well, and a sense of which scripture particularly speaks to different groups of people. I know that will be personal as well, but the kind of way you're exposed to scripture and the way you use scripture coming from different contexts can be quite different. And that is a huge source of richness for developing our own faith.
Do you think there's a lot of energy and interest in people from, say, from Persian heritage or from African heritage or even from other heritages that you've come across wanting to be in an environment that mix beyond the language to share scriptures, or they rather would like to just meet as a monocultural environment just so that they can speak the language more fluently and without much inhibition regarding the language barrier?
I think, as ever, it's a bit of a mixture. We're very lucky in Salford to have Reverend Layla Nikru, who you will have come across, and she is Iranian, fantastic final year curate, and she is such a wonderful, spiritual, loving, kind person, brilliant priest, and she has been, as well as running a Farsi language service at, I think it's St. John's, isn't it?
Yeah.
She also comes along on a Wednesday when we have the charity there on a Wednesday, and we have our midweek service. Right. She comes along and runs a prayer and Bible study group in Persian, in Farsi, for about 12 or more young men. And out of that have come a number of confirmations, interesting kind of connections with the church, that you come in needing the support of your own language and people very much like you around you. If you're coming in a very vulnerable state.
Yeah.
And some of the people we're dealing with are in a vulnerable state. I mean, if they're seeking asylum, not all of them are, but if they are, then that you see that develop and grow, though, as they find community, hopefully. This is my prayer anyway. And then, the lady I mentioned reading in English in the church just came up to me and said, could I do that? I said, well, would you like to speak Farsi or English? She said, well, maybe Farsi first, but I'll have a go. And I see a migration from an initial needing the comfort of your own culture around you to the growing confidence and expansion. And I think some people may always, when I lived in Spain, for instance, there's very strong English and German communities in Spain with no intention of ever learning Spanish. They're very paella, maybe that's it. Buenos dias. And they have their own churches, they have their own everything. Yeah. But there are ones who do engage more deeply. Yeah. So I think it will be a mixture, but we're seeing, it doesn't feel to me that we have a Farsi speaking side of the church and an English speaking side. And from a pastoral point of view, I was talking to a couple of our older parishioners who've lived in Salford since they were knee-high to a grasshopper, and the kind of white British background like that, who have just loved pastorally engaging, well, with everybody, but equally with the, Iranian, Nigerian, Indian communities, and vice versa. So
do you think that situation, because it's not all the time I come across that conduciveness, where people are positive regarding new cultures coming in. One, they haven't got the patience to listen to the language properly, to listen to the accent, to make sure they communicate well. But do you think being able to move forward and make it a better environment is to do with the leadership or the characteristics of the leader of that church?
I think there is quite a bit in there. I mean, I think if you were to try and change, as you try and change things in any church, you're going to experience challenges and pushback and problems along the way. And you may well be making the wrong changes, and we're all discerning as we go, aren't we? So, but it's very important to me that there are people, the leadership in church reflects the makeup of the people in the wider community, and absolutely the people in the church itself, and ideally the whole wider community. So at the moment, our PCC is 100% white, Salford background. Yeah. Lovely. Really, really great. No, absolutely.
Of course. Yeah.
But it would be wonderful to be able to move that and develop that over time so that we have more representation. I mentioned Henry going forward as an ALM, which is wonderful news. We need people visible up front.
Yeah.
Leading. The people have the same range of gifts and range of callings, regardless of what they look like or where they come from.
I can relate to that because there's something we call resonance. In my church, we grew exponentially very quickly within 8 years when I became a reader. When I started becoming very active in the front and all the other stuff. So when people come, this almost like they see someone that look like them.
Yes.
They may not even have to be, dark skin or black heritage or anything. They just find, okay, we can see someone who is not speaking Queen's or King's English, like that.
Oh, yes.
With King's accent, but, it's relatable. And I think that representation does help to move things along in the way. Now, what do you think about collaboration with all the other worshiping communities that probably have links with your church or worship around your church, but are based on monocultural setup?
Well, collaboration across
ecumenical,
ecumenical
go with the
collaboration.
community. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. We have a number of churches that meet in our buildings and come from different in the area, not just the churches I'm responsible for. From Eritrean churches, Portuguese. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. And there's a lot. My sense of that is those are churches that are really very much serving that community, supporting in their language, in their way of worshipping, and allowing them to carry on in that way. And without deeper connections, if you like, it's interesting. I do think that you are going to find a kind of patchwork of different types of ways of doing this. I mentioned Layla earlier, that allows for monocultural congregation of Farsi speakers in one place, but then a couple of miles away, they can be at St. Thomas's, where in the midweek service we have the service books are bilingual. We have some element of Farsi in the reading of the gospel, and the whole concept around mission communities, wherever that's up to at the moment, should allow for a range of different ways of engaging with people. And I certainly think there's a lot of expertise around. If you're wondering how to get started, there are lots of people who are going through this, and no, David, you can put people in touch.
So because this process is all about finding a way where other people can tap in and say, oh, I like that idea. It depends on your context, isn't it? What sort of environment your parish church is, or you find yourself, the community that surrounds you, whether they do monocultural worship, and the leadership tend to once in a while bring them all together. There was someone we talked to earlier today that they have a habit with one group every 3 months that they come together. So it's just almost like bringing people to eat, worship, do things together. And in between that, they go back to their different areas where they feel more comfortable. What are the other, do you find, since you have been in Salford now, what are the things you will say are obvious challenges in progressing with what you're doing, the good work?
Challenges. I mean, my vision, such as I have one, and these things always change, is I would love to see the church truly reflecting all the range of people around. Now, I know that won't be the vision of everyone around for a start. And as you say, the kind of monocultural approaches are going to work for a lot of people. And there will be people who, and that is not, I'm not against that in principle. But I personally would love to see more sharing and more intercultural contact. I think the challenge of that will be that as you start to consider things like, what style of worship, there's already, you don't have to go very far in terms of different cultures to say, are we a church that will accept an organ or not? Should there be words up on the screen, or should we always have hymn books? If you're going to, knowing the Church of England, that we'll always have those kind of problems, when you start saying, what if we slightly changed the way we worshipped to include more elements from these that resonate with these different cultures, or more voices that maybe you might find it a little harder to understand exactly what's being said. But what's being said is important and part of our faith.
Yeah, in our church, we have that problem whereby it's a challenge for us, because when you want to tweak things, especially the people that have been in that church for the past 3-4 generations, and they say, don't tweak it too much. We want our church to be where it is. And sometimes we just say, okay, once in a while, let's just let it all go. Let's celebrate. And some of the items we do when we do the combined worship of different cultures mixing very well, we tend to bring them into some of the way we do our liturgy.
Yes.
Like we said, the Lord's Prayer and all the other stuff like that. Allow people to just express themselves in whichever way they feel more comfortable. And I'm happy that that is becoming more and more popular within
I think sometimes that model where you have separate groups and they come together sporadically, my limited experience of that is the ones who like to come together will come together, and the ones who don't will say, oh, I've got a week off this Sunday. But the ones who do come together can be your ambassadors and the people who can be given a voice in their own monocultural context, if you like. So at least if you get somebody up there who can speak positively and share positively about the benefits, then that can help. But
you put a finger on the pulse and you say, oh, I've got to have a week off, because sometimes you hear people say, it's not my thing.
Yeah.
Therefore, I'm not going to church that week. And it's just the way of how the leadership, get balance into all these, dynamics.
One good bit of advice I had from a friend was, if you're going to do something new, introduce it for a limited period of time. So we are going to do, let's try this up till Lent. Let's just try this up to Lent, and then if we don't like it, we can stop it.
That's clever, because there's an end point people can look forward to.
Yeah, and they can kind of go, we're not
6 weeks.
Yeah. Exactly. I can have 6 weeks holiday. but maybe they think the fear is that once you change something, you'll lose something, and you will not see. It's the thing about being more what is it? Something like you feel risk of loss 6 times stronger than gate. I can't remember what it is, but the fear that once something changes, it will never go back. It'll never be right again. So, I mean, you do need to take people along with you, but ultimately you can't be held to ransom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the key things we were saying here is that, first of all, we pray very hard over it. And you mentioned Leila earlier on. Leila was in a conference with her, which is called Hope-Filled Conversation. That was last week. And Leila was part of the panel contributor as well. I know, and she talked about her experience, which is very moving, regarding how, a singular number of Farsi congregation turn into, double figures, and on is growing like that. Long may that continue. I'm quite pleased that our diocese have now put in place structures and processes where we can be more welcoming and make people from other parts of the world that wants to worship God, that wants to be part of our community, feel belonged, because that's exactly what I think,
I mean, there's some way to go, I think, on this as well, because one thing that's sometimes when somebody says something to you and you think, that I really should have seen that, that's really obvious. It was pointed out to me the other day that the mandatory safeguarding things that you need to post up on the walls, you can easily get hold of them from the diocese, but they were trying to get hold of some official Farsi ones in other languages and couldn't find any. Now, it may be that they are available, but it hadn't even occurred to me that these things need to go up in all the languages of the people that you are dealing with, and particularly when some of these groups are more vulnerable than others as well. So I kind of felt still, even after sitting here having a really lovely relaxed chat with you about this and all the wonderful things that we could do, I'm still thinking there are some basic things
I should be thinking of.
So I hope through these podcasts and other things that you're doing, anybody who might be listening to this might say, you're missing like 100 things. Get back to you.
Yeah.
We'll share it out.
Yeah. Please get back to me.
Yeah.
That's wonderful, Peter. Thank you very much for that. Yes, I do get it. Like people say, we're taking baby steps. Really, I really like us to take some adult strides as well.
Be good
with the obvious things that we need to be doing.
When I was a child, I thought like a child.
Yeah, you say that again. Yeah, because process of growth, process of development is that look at it on its child process.
Yes.
Baby, toddler, when they want to start walking, they don't get up one day and walk forever. They walk before.
Yes.
And every time they walk before, they get better with the encouragement of the parents. So that's what we're trying to do, to see how best we can make, because our society is not going to go back to the way we were in the Victorian times.
No, nor should it.
The way forward is that, but we do not want to be left behind and become an archaic, part of dead organization. We want to grow with it. That's what all our leaders, the bishops, are fighting for, for the growth to continue. And for the great work you guys are doing towards that as well.
Well, I do think that one of the things that I can fail to see in this, in looking for that bigger picture of where the overall flourishing of the whole church, God wishes that all be saved. We maybe sometimes have too narrow an understanding of what culture is. The conversation we were having before we started, that I'm very aware in Salford, someone I got to know well when she was a vicar in Crewe, Lynn Cullens, who's now down in Barking and has a particular, as bishop there, has a particular calling to estates ministry, right, and a strong sense that the church doesn't always raise up leaders and encourage people from working class backgrounds, doesn't see that and is happy to ship in another middle-aged white guy from Cambridge or something. So again, I'm really aware that in looking and thinking, we have this kind of assumption that it's a white monoculture, and then we have people coming in.
Yeah.
There is a lot of richness among, in all of these different cultures. And to look at, say, our Iranian community and say, oh, they're Iranians. Loads of different types of community, different things going on inside there.
They are people.
Absolutely.
We say different characteristics. We're all one in the kingdom of God. Hence this podcast, Intercultural Kingdom. So I hope we continue that whatever we do, all our colleagues far and wide can find ways of linking in and find a little bit of wisdom here and there, which they can use. I use this phrase so far as intentionally curious,
yes,
about others coming into them, because that way everybody grows. Without special grafting, the life will die on its own. So you need that richness of mix. I think I'm getting on a soapbox now.
No.
Yeah, it's not me to do that, but it's you to come and tell me all that. So, look, Reverend Peter Bennett, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. It's been wonderful talking to you. And I think I've gained a lot more, from the starting points to what it is now regarding the knowledge for your ministry. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
And I wish you all the best.